Welcome to the Enchanted Ears podcast.
where we discuss anything and everything Disney.
I'm Angela.
And I'm Joe, and on today's episode, we're taking a look back at what it was like on the opening day of the Magic Kingdom. So we're going to go through all of the parks at Walt Disney World and kind of take a look back at, what were the attractions that were there? What was the restaurants? What was the ticket prices? I mean, that's somewhat shocking.
That's the biggest shocker right there.
Looking back at what the ticket prices were. So we're going to start with the Magic Kingdom here. And then, over the next couple months, we'll kind of continue the series and go through, each park chronologically. But it's amazing with the Magic Kingdom, and we'll get into it. But like, how much is still there from opening day? And kind of, speaking of this, and it kind of rolls into our news somewhat nicely here this week, is that at the Magic Kingdom, Disney announced one of the opening day attractions, the Frontierland Shooting Arcade, that is there, is actually going to be closing. So that was one of the opening day attractions at the Magic Kingdom. Kind of mention that later in the show when we talk about the opening day attractions. But it is going to be closing June 23rd here.
And they're making way for a DVC lounge, am I correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
So it seems to be I guess the plan is to put a DVC lounge in every park in the same way there's a Club 33 lounge at every park down at Walt Disney World. Because at Epcot, you have the DVC lounge already. This will be the second one. And then I'm assuming they will put one in Hollywood Studios somewhere. There's a lot of room in Hollywood Studios because there's a lot of space they're not using in Hollywood Studios, and probably in Animal Kingdom too. So this will be closing, which I believe the 23rd is when Tiana's officially opens. I can't remember if it's the 23rd or the 28th, but it's around that time. So they're going to have a new attraction, close this attraction. We have been getting some like the media event was happening with Tiana. So some people have ridden the attraction. So there are like reviews, early like ride videos out. I really haven't like watched too much of it. I've tried to avoid it to a certain extent, but that will be officially opened here whenever this attraction closes. The other thing, sticking with Magic Kingdom here, is that Country Bear Jamboree, the redo that they've been working on, pretty quick turnaround on it.
Yeah, I was really surprised to see that it's going to be opening in July, like mid-July.
Yeah, the 17th, I believe. Yeah, and this is where they're taking Country Bears, kind of updating it. They're recording like more popular songs and Disney songs. Like they mentioned, like Aladdin's going to be a part of it. So I don't know how much of the original Country Bears soundtrack's going to be in it, how much of it's going to be Disney-fied. It'll be interesting to see like what happens here, but I'm guessing, the animatronics, the structure of the show is not changing too much, because if it closed in like January, like it's only been like 6 months, 5-6 months. So that's a pretty quick turnaround. I don't think anything major is updated. It sounds like probably more like the songs and stuff like they talked about.
So my question is, okay, so they had to probably do some changes, but do you think that the programmers, because I'm sure that they program the bears so that their mouths move to the songs, do you think that they were able to do a large portion of that?
Did the bears' mouths really move that well to the songs, though? I mean, these are...
I don't know.
This is a pretty old attraction. I don't know how close it was.
I'm just wondering, like, can those programmers that do that, are they able to do that prior to the ride shutting down? Like, can they do that in advance and then basically use a chip or what? I mean, I have no idea how that technology works. But
you would have to imagine if they knew what songs were going to go in.
Yeah.
You could record a demo track. You don't need the actual final performance. You could record a demo track to know kind of where you were. It's somewhat like animation. Like when you see like the Pixar animators, or like when they did like the Frozen documentary, where a lot of the animators will have mirrors and they'll make the facial expressions that the character's supposed to make. Or, they'll take pictures of somebody and they use that as a reference for the animation. So they don't need the final performance to know what they want it to look like. So I have a feeling that the Imagineers, the people programming the animatronics, could do that. Like they could almost sing the song and kind of program the beats, and then it's maybe more fine tuning once the final performance. Oh, they held this note a little bit longer. They, sang this a little bit quicker. So yeah, I would think they'd have to be able to do that pretty quickly, because again, it's such a quick turnaround to it. But that'll be interesting. That'll be opening soon. I think that's good, because now you're going to have basically, 2 new rides that have been closed, with Tiana's opening up, with Country Bear Jamboree reopening. That's going to pull a lot of people, which will kind of help with capacity issues, and it'll pull a lot of people to a portion of the park that I feel like a lot of people have not been going to over in Frontierland, which should help then some of the other areas like Fantasyland, Tomorrowland, that sort of thing. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see like what the crowds look like and kind of how that changes everything once all this stuff opens.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that'll help.
And then Disney also gave a first look going over to Hollywood Studios, the new show, the Voyage of the Little Mermaid, so the new Little Mermaid show that they're having there. That will be coming out later this year, but they gave a first look of it. There's going to be puppets involved. There's also doing like motion capture. Like there was somebody as Ursula doing a mocap performance. So it seems like there'll be like a digital portion of it with screens with mocap performances, live actors, puppets. So it's going to be like a multimedia show, which should be interesting. Kind of exciting. I mean, it was a good first look, I feel like, and I think the mix of all of those mediums is going to make it somewhat intriguing. That will at least get, I think, people to go, oh, let me go check that out once. Now, do they keep going back over and over again? I don't know, but at least it kind of gets you a little bit interested to go be like, I want to see what this is actually all about.
Yeah, it is really interesting to me because I feel like Disney has a lot of properties in their pocket that they kind of ignore. And it's really interesting to me that Mermaid is one that they return to over and over again. And I mean, I think that, just sort of a little foreshadowing, we do have an episode coming up that I'm kind of working on with Disney soundtracks again. And I do think that there's a part of it that has to do with the soundtrack there. But yeah, it fascinates me because I like Mermaid, but it is not anywhere near my top Disney films. But I do think there's a certain portion of it that like kind of captures your imagination because it is underwater, which is obviously different than the reality that we all live in. We're all land creatures. So I know, right? Wow, I know that was like a news flash to everybody.
Like Nat Geo over here.
I know, right? But it is interesting to think like there's a certain amount of the imagination. There's something that they can do with movement that's different and like bring these very iconic characters. Everybody knows who Flounder and Sebastian are, and even Flotsam and Jetsam. So like I do think it's interesting that they go back there then again and again, but I think that there's a reason for that.
Well, I would be interested to kind of almost see Disney's data analytics on this stuff because they have Disney Plus, because they have merch sales. Like they gather so much information.
Yeah, that's true.
And I think that's the thing we don't know. Like I've heard that Moana is one of, if not the top streamed movies on Disney Plus, and it has been ever since Disney Plus started and it went on Disney Plus. And that's why they say you're getting Moana 2. That's why they're talking about a Moana attraction. Whereas a lot of people are like, oh, okay, that was a good movie, but maybe it's not one of my top Disney movies. People stream it. And I would love to see that data, because to your point, is the Little Mermaid something that is constantly getting
like the data wise
streamed
it is popular. Yeah.
So is it that, or is it the fact that you got to figure a lot of the Imagineers coming up now are probably our age. They grew up in the Disney Renaissance era where it was The Little Mermaid, it was Aladdin, it was Beauty and the Beast. And so are they picking those
I'm sorry,
movies?
You left out a very important one.
The Lion King. Well, they don't do much with The Lion King though.
I know that's what I'm saying. But it's kind of what I'm saying. I feel like The Lion King gets like shoved and shoehorned into little corners of Animal Kingdom where it's like, oh yeah, this is definitely a fit here.
I think The Lion King's just tougher because they're lions. Like they're not humanoid figures like Beast, and I say humanoid figures because the Beast isn't human obviously, but at least he's like upright, and I feel like it's easier to do a character that's a beast because he's on two legs and he's upright. It's just easier for animatronics.
But his legs are like, he's like a dog leg. Like his legs don't go the right way.
But at least it kind of works, in terms of that. But yeah, so that's what I wonder. Is it the data that Little Mermaid is that popular, or is it just that the Imagineers that are in there have nostalgia for these movies? So instead of them looking at like, hey, let's look at Wreck-It Ralph or Moana or Encanto, some of these newer ones are like, no, I like The Little Mermaid. Like because that's what they know, because that's what they grew up. And so I wonder how much of each of those is impacting it.
Yeah, That's interesting to me that you said that Moana is one of the most popular ones. And it is kind of funny to me. Like, there's certain things where you say, like, they have all of this data, but then I'm like, okay, if they were going to make Moana, they took those shorts and they're making a second Moana movie. You would think that they'd say,
They're
okay,
still making a live action movie. They announced casting for the live action Moana. But I can't believe this movie's moving forward. So it has to be popular if they're making two movies.
It's insane.
Now they're gonna have like two Moana verses at the same time.
Absolutely insane. But my question is, you would think though, and I feel like I'm just very curious what Moana is going to be like. And you think that they would, again, and I'm speculating, have learned from Wish. I feel like we've talked about before how we think Wish was maybe rushed, and that's why I don't think the story quite worked out. Like, I think it had the bones to be a really good movie, but I think it missed on a lot of accounts. And I'm worried they're going to do that with Moana, where they're like, oh, this is something we don't want to sink it into streaming.
Bit, yeah.
And so, and then like they didn't even get Lin-Manuel Miranda to write the music for it. So you don't have the musical continuity.
Well, he was busy writing music for Mufasa for the new Lion King movie. So, yeah.
Which they chose not to animate or do their computer animations. They chose to CGI it
live action,
so that your lions look half the time they look really good, and the other half the time they look taxidermy.
We don't have time for another rant on the
Don't get me started on CGI lions.
But to your point, it is interesting of like, why the Little Mermaid? Because that would not be a movie I would pick that they keep going back to, but Little Mermaid is very popular. But the show looks good. I'm interested. Like I said,
I definitely want to go see it.
Now. Yeah, they got me intrigued. So definitely want to see that whenever that comes out. So yeah, a lot of good stuff happening at the Magic Kingdom. It just so happened, I think Disney knew we were like doing this episode about opening day at the Magic Kingdom. So they dropped a lot of Magic Kingdom news. So it's kind of worked out perfectly. All right, so let's talk Magic Kingdom. So looking back at the opening day of Magic Kingdom, and I think what I found most interesting, so kind of was thinking about this of like, the parks, obviously they change. If you look at 5-10 years ago, like there's a lot of things that change in the parks, but I was like, what was it like on opening day down at Walt Disney World? Because it was just Magic Kingdom. So this is kind of opening day Magic Kingdom and opening day Walt Disney World, for that matter. It's just amazing to look at how little there was compared to today, but then also how much stuff was there on opening day that's still there today too. Like it's crazy, like in both respects, that like just looking at the footprint of the park expanding, but then how many attractions that you're riding now that are 50 years old that opened in 1971. So let's kind of start with that. So Magic Kingdom opened on October 1st, 1971. It took 4 years to build once they actually broke ground. So they broke ground,
which is crazy considering how long it takes them to build stuff now. Like they built an entire park.
I mean, they built Disneyland in a year.
Yeah, that's
insane. It was a year to the day that they built Disneyland,
which is why the concrete was still dry.
Yeah, but the
or the asphalt.
Yeah, but with the actual park, it took 4 years. I mean, I think Shanghai probably took 4 years. Again, they plan these for a lot longer than it's actually, building for. I mean, if you look at Epic Universe, that will probably be done from whenever they broke ground to whenever they open in 3 to 4 years. So I think that's kind of normal. But yeah, it broke ground in May of 1967. And really for the first few years even, it was just like site prep and utility work.
I guess it does kind of make sense because you figure when you're getting a new ride, it is probably an existing part of the park. You can't work when people are there. Whereas when you have a plain piece of ground that there is no expectations, nobody is there, you can work on it at any time. You can work throughout the night if you have to, or throughout the whole day. Like, I guess you do have that advantage of just having access to that anytime you want.
But I think even with that, what's amazing is, like, again, Disneyland was built in a year completely, and the first couple years they were working on it was just site development. It was just utilities. I mean, the place was a swamp. They had to get it ready. I mean, famously, the utilidors are the first level of the park, and the park itself is actually the second level. Or if you want to see the utilidors as ground level, then the park's level 1. But they had to build all of that up. I mean, the Seven Seas Lagoon that's there, that is the the monorail kind of encompasses, that was man-made. That wasn't even there at all. So they actually excavated and they took that dirt to then build up for the Magic Kingdom. So that's where they got the fill for the Magic Kingdom and in turn made the Seven Seas Lagoon. So that entire body of water wasn't even something that's there. They built that and that's man-made. So even just thinking about like what the site looked like in 1967 before they broke ground to a couple years later where you have the Seven Seas Lagoon, you have this theme park. Just amazing to think about just building something like that. I mean, you don't see that very often because we don't get a lot of parks. Like we are getting to see that with Epic Universe. Like it is really cool to see, just a flat site and then all this stuff starting to pop up. And then, pretty soon it's going to start having greenery and all that sort of stuff. It's just phenomenal to see these kind of like mega projects. And then you kind of forget about that once these parks are open, that like what they used to be before, and especially at Disney in the 60s before Disney went there really wasn't much in Orlando, not like it is now. And so just like it was kind of just completely empty land that they then built this theme park at.
Yeah, it was a blank canvas. So you picture it as a piece of art. You're staring at a blank canvas and then they're adding layer upon layer upon layer of paint until you finally have something that's, ideally beautiful, that it didn't exist before.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. So when it opened, there were only 2 hotels there. So you had the Polynesian and the Contemporary, which I think is kind of interesting because if you would have asked me what were the hotels that opened with the Magic Kingdom, I can definitely see the Contemporary because it's right there. But I don't know that I would have guessed the Polynesian because it's the farthest one away from the Magic Kingdom. Like you would almost think it would have been Grand Floridian and the Contemporary because those are the 2 closest to the Magic Kingdom.
And I feel like something about the Grand Flow seems old. Like, I don't know what it is. I think that they build it to feel almost like very old money. Like that's maybe what is kind of coming to mind. And so, yeah, I would definitely think that one is the elder of the 2 parks.
Right. And I think why the Polynesian is where it is, and if I'm just kind of guessing, you have the parking lot there and you have the ticket and transportation center because the monorail is there to take you around to the other side of the lagoon. So it kind of makes sense you have one hotel on that side kind of by the parking lot, and then you have another hotel over by the park itself. But it was just those 2 hotels, and it opened with 6 themed lands. 5 of those were copies of Disneyland. So you had Main Street, Adventureland, Frontierland, Fantasyland, and Tomorrowland. And then the one exclusive to the Magic Kingdom is Liberty Square versus having the New Orleans Square that Disneyland has. And we'll get into the opening day attractions because, again, most of the attractions were replicas of what they had at Disneyland. They did have some unique attractions as well. But this park was very much Disneyland is doing well. People know Disneyland, people like Disneyland, but there is a large group of people on the East Coast of the country that do not travel to the West Coast, that don't come, across the Mississippi. I mean, I think Walt looked at where everybody was coming from, and a very, very small percentage was coming from east of the Mississippi. So he's like, we have to go out east somewhere. And that's why he originally settled on Florida. And so that's why I was like, okay, we just need to bring Disneyland and basically copy what we're doing there because it's successful and bring it to Florida and the people will come.
What's kind of, again, sad about this is that Walt had these great ideas and never lived to even see the ground being broken for it. And so it is really sad that he never got to see that. But his vision definitely was carried out to the nth degree, I think, especially with what the park is now. So it is really, it's interesting and sad to think that he never got to see that. But I mean, Roy did a really great job. And we did an episode a while back with Roy Disney, his brother, and talking about how he sort of saw Walt's vision through until it was completed. And so if you want to learn about that, check out that episode because it was definitely one of my favorite historical episodes that we've ever done.
It was a really fun episode because it was interesting to learn more about Roy, because you're right, he is kind of the unsung hero of the Disney company. He was with Walt the whole way, and in many ways, I don't think the Disney company would have succeeded without him. He was the financial guy, Walt was the creative guy, and he kept the money coming so that Walt could, fund all of these ideas and fund the parks. And then, yes, Walt was the one that said, hey, we need to go to Florida. But unfortunately, he passed away before they even broke ground. And so Roy saw it through. And I think that's probably, too, one of the reasons why it was, let's just take what we have that's successful, because in a way it's honoring Walt, because he created Disneyland and he created everything that was at Disneyland. And so, people, I mean, at this time, people still knew who Walt Disney was. I'm sure he was still a huge figure. I mean, this is only a few years after his death that it's like, okay, hey, Walt Disney World, Walt Disney did the Enchanted Tiki Room. He had these birds that can sing. So let's have it here. I mean, famously, Walt Disney World did not have Pirates of the Caribbean because they thought, oh, it's so close to the Caribbean, nobody's going to want Pirates of the Caribbean. And everybody started asking, where are those Pirates of the Caribbean? Because that was a huge thing that Walt worked on. And it was, very, infamously done, because he had the TV shows where he was showing what we were working on in Disneyland. And everybody was like, we want to see these animatronics. We want to see these pirates. And so it was kind of this way to like pay respect to Walt, and people to be like, hey, I want to see what Walt Disney did. This is my opportunity to do it. So let's just try to bring as much of that over to this park as we possibly can. What's interesting is the park, looking at what it cost to actually build it. So it cost $400 million to build, which again, that's in the 60s and 70s. With inflation, it's about $3 billion in today's dollars, which I feel like is still a pretty good deal. I think Shanghai Disneyland cost like $5 billion to build that. So it seems like it's still a little bit cheaper. What's interesting is Disneyland, again, kind of comparing the two parks, it cost $17 million to build that in 1955, which you're like, okay, well, what would that cost in 1971? It was about $25 million in 1971, or about $197 million today. So the amount they spent on Disneyland is a fraction of what they spent on Magic Kingdom, or even what they spent on parks today. Now, I don't think Disneyland had all of the crazy attractions that they have now. I mean, it was very basic when it opened initially. And so
it's
I think
less land than the Magic Kingdom, correct?
Yeah, it's less land.
So they had to develop less land, so it would be
cheaper. Which you also have to figure, there weren't necessarily animatronics. I mean, they really didn't develop the animatronics until the World's Fair in the 60s. And so the rides, I feel like, cost less. You know what I mean? Like, there wasn't as much advanced ride systems. There wasn't as much animatronics. So I think that's why they were able to do more with less. But looking back on it, just absolutely incredible. Even today, to say, hey, we're going to spend $200 million to build a theme park, they can't build a ride for less than $200 million. So absolutely incredible what they did on Disneyland there as well. The other thing that was interesting, so we kind of talked about, hey, Disneyland is popular. Let's kind of replicate it here. When Disney World opened, it wasn't really kind of like the fanfare that they had at Disneyland. So Disneyland opening day, there was 28,000 people there. There were reports of people like making fake tickets, climbing over walls to get in. Like, everybody wanted to be there. When Magic Kingdom opened, it did a little under 11,000 people on opening day. So not even half of what Disneyland did. It quickly, obviously, ramped up. I mean, they're doing about 46 to 55,000 people per day, depending on, the year, of between 17 and 20 million people in attendance. But I do wonder, in today, like, speaking of like the attendance. So again, if you're looking at, hey, there's 20 million people that go to Magic Kingdom, a lot of those people go to Epcot, they go to Hollywood Studios. Like, I wonder how, I was thinking about this when I was like looking at the attendance count. How many of the people were like counted twice? Like, if we go to the parks and we park hop, and we go to Magic Kingdom, and then we go to Epcot, in one day, are we counted in both attendance numbers? Because like they do these theme park reporting of like the most attended theme parks, and and 20 million people go to Magic Kingdom and only 10 million people go to Epcot. So how do they count for park hopping? Same with like Universal Studios. Like if you go between both parks, like do you get counted twice? Like I wonder how they account for that, or people coming back multiple times. So that's kind of interesting. Again, just kind of like a little tidbit I was thinking of, like as you're looking at the numbers today, are they almost overinflated because of park hopping, because people are there multiple days versus, hey, you got 10,000 people in a day. That's pretty good when that's all that was there to do, to get 10,000 people, 11,000 people to come see this park, versus today there's so much to do there. That's why you're getting 50,000 people a day.
Yeah, I wonder if they don't do the park that you attend first, and then that way it's a more accurate representation of kind of like that's the park you prioritize that day. Or yeah, you're right, like do they count you twice?
Yeah, it's got to be something like that, because you would think if you got counted for every park you went to, the other parks would be higher. Because I feel like a lot of people park hop and go to multiple parks in a day. So if that many people are going to Magic Kingdom, you would think a good majority of them are going to Magic Kingdom and one other park at least in that day. So you would think they would be close. So they have to have some way to kind of factor that in. But what is interesting, I think, just kind of going back to opening day, is that there was only 11,000 people there versus 28,000 people at Disneyland. That it necessarily wasn't this huge immediate success, and again, I don't know if that was because there wasn't as much around in Florida, at the time that they were, again, just kind of developing this somewhat in the middle of nowhere, that maybe people weren't rushing out. Or was it everybody knew that Disneyland's first day was so crazy, they wanted to avoid Disney World's first day because they thought it was going to be absolutely insane?
Yeah, I would almost imagine that would be what it was, is trying to avoid the crowds. And I mean, also Disneyland, as I mentioned, was not complete. Like I think it was, what was it, like there weren't working water fountains, and like there was a bunch of different stories.
I think
like
they got
that
it done like the day before. They were pouring asphalt on the pavement like the day before.
Right. And so like those stories sort of circulated, and they're like, you know what, if I'm going to spend the $3 or whatever to go attend, I actually looked this up. What was it? I think it was around $3.
Well, it was $3.50. You're talking about Magic Kingdom?
Yeah. So to get in on opening day, it was $3.50. And so they're like, yo, $3.50, that's a lot of money. That's like around $21 today. I'm going to take my $21 and I'll spend it 2 weeks from now once they've got the kinks worked out, because I don't want to spend that $3.50 and then get there and everything be broken and have asphalt in my shoes.
Yeah. And have to fight all these people, like crowds. It's just going to be insane.
Right. I'll wait till things die down a little bit. So, I mean, I feel like that has to be it, but you never know.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't know. But again, I think it obviously quickly picked up and became very popular. I do want to take just a brief moment to mention the monorails, because I love the monorails, and the monorails were part of opening day. So there were two lines on the monorail at opening day. You had the Express line and the Magic Kingdom line, which was so you had the TTC, the Polynesian, the Contemporary, and the Magic Kingdom. So basically what you have today, the Grand Floridian stop was added in 1988 when that opened. And then the line down to Epcot was added when Epcot opened, obviously. But what's amazing is the Disney World monorail system is actually one of the most frequented monorail systems in the world, with about 150,000 passengers per day. I think there's 2, maybe 3 like major cities that have more passengers on their monorail line per day. I think like one's in like China and it gets like 1 million people, but like Disney is there like 3rd or 4th in terms of that at Walt Disney World, which is incredible. And there are currently 12 monorail trains. So they are blue, black, coral, gold, green, lime, orange, peach, red, silver, teal, and yellow. So just randomly ranking these, teal is obviously the best one, unobjectively. Angela, what's your favorite monorail color?
Whatever one picks me up the fastest.
It's teal. Teal's the best.
Peach.
Peach? All right. Yeah. I mean,
because of Princess Peach.
One of my favorite things to do is every time we get on a monorail, randomly rank the number. So I like gold rolls up. I'm like, gold, that's my 5th favorite monorail. You know, lime, oh, that's 10th. Like I randomly do it every time. Absolutely love it. But teal, objectively the best one.
Oh my goodness, you're so funny. I feel like this is a ridiculously obnoxious Disney trivia question. Which of these 5 colored monorails is not correct and actually a monorail car in Walt Disney World?
That would be like a really tricky question to do that.
So yeah, and then you'd list like brown. I mean, brown.
Yeah, brown. That's pretty clear.
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
that
yeah.
was not one.
Burgundy. You put burgundy in there or some.
There's no purple. Like I think you could go.
Purple.
You could go purple, and or like lavender, and like those could potentially, like they're close enough that you think, oh, that might be a monorail color.
Yeah.
But it's not.
Yeah.
So getting back to opening day attractions, restaurants, like what was there to do in the parks on opening day? And I think one of the things that's pretty incredible, and if you're just listening to this and you want to see, we'll throw the maps up on YouTube. You can find us in Chance Here's podcast on YouTube. But just kind of comparing one of the early maps to one of the maps today, and just seeing how much space is out there. Like around Tomorrowland, there's basically nothing out there. Like now you have Tron, which extends like past the original berm and everything like that, and they've extended outside the berm in some other areas as well. But the whole like thing past Tomorrowland and kind of, you know, New Fantasyland, that's just like all open space on the original map. Like there weren't attractions there. Like it would be amazing to kind of walk through that, because it's just so much empty space and there's just not as much to do, versus when you look at it today, just how developed everything is. It's also interesting of how they changed the scale of these maps. Like if you look at the current map, it actually looks smaller than the original map.
Yeah, I kind of like
even
the
though
design
there's less stuff in the original map.
I like the design of the original map better. The other thing that I find kind of interesting is they use the color yellow primarily for the original map, whereas the new one is green, and it looks kind of like Whoville. Like it almost looks like a Dr. Seuss map.
Yeah.
And the font on the map, I was like kind of checking that out. It's like more like Renaissance Festival font than like Disney font. So there's just a couple like interesting little points on the map that like,
yeah, and even just like the proportions and the direction of it. Like the original map, it's kind of like mushed together more. And if you look at the current map, I think it's more the actual like proportions and distance from one thing to another. But like if you look at the original map, it kind of looks like Jungle Cruise is literally like right behind Main Street, and then the current map you can see more of like the gap between it. Like there is some space out there of just kind of how they space things out. So yeah, just I feel like the original one was more like a like artistic license of it.
Mm-hmm.
Like I feel like Six Flags, I don't know if they still do this, but like when I was a kid, went to like Cedar Point a lot, and I feel like their maps were like that. Like the roller coasters were these very like cartoonish caricatures of the roller coasters, and it was like they were in no proportion to anything, and it was just kind of like, hey, there's a roller coaster in this area, it kind of looks cool, like you want to go see it. And I feel like that's kind of how that original map was, of just like, hey, we're really not going to worry about scale or anything. It's just like, this is the general vicinity you want to be if you want to go do this fun thing.
I feel like it's a different approach to map making too, whereas the cartoony sort of map is more designed for kids to be like, oh my gosh, I want to go ride this. This is what this one looks like. And then it's left up to the parents to figure out, where is the entrance to this? Where is this? And so over the years, they probably received complaints like, how do I actually get to the entrance of this ride? Or where are these things located? Or this looks really close to this, but it's actually not that close. So they had to get more realistic as time moved on, because people were like, dude, this is nothing like what your map is showing
Well,
me.
and I think as they got more stuff, it's harder to fit
Yeah.
everything in here if you don't have kind of the right proportion. So looking at the opening day attractions, and I will say this, we tried our best to find the actual opening day attractions, because if you look around, there are some discrepancies, and I think some of it comes into, and we'll talk about a couple where they weren't there opening day. They came online day 2, day 3, maybe a week later. But some people, I think, kind of group them in if it was day 2 as opening day. And so you can have some like minor discrepancies on what was truly October 1st, 1971 versus what was maybe a little bit later. So if some of these are a little bit off,
Forgive
don't hate
us.
Yeah, don't hate us. But the opening day attractions were Country Bear Jamboree, which is still there today. Amazing.
Currently closed, but yes.
Yeah, but getting redone, but still there. The Main Street Vehicles, Dumbo the Flying Elephant, the Frontier Shooting Arcade, Hall of Presidents, Haunted Mansion, It's a Small World, Jungle Cruise. I have my Jungle Cruise shirt on. The Mad Tea Party. What was interesting is this was built without a roof. And then they added the roof in 1974 because of all the rain and the sun. Like they needed to have it so they could keep it running. Prince Charming's Regal Carousel. So we've read all of those. So those are the first 10 still there. Now we're finally getting to the first one that is no longer at the Magic Kingdom. So incredible that the first 10 attractions we read that were there October 1st, 1971 are still there in 2024.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a testament to, I think, like original Imagineering and how well they made stories. And again, I mean, I guess Dumbo is kind of IP, but the rest of them aren't. They're original attractions and original stories, and just how they came up with innovative ride systems. They came up with unique backstories and themes that they can withstand the test of time.
Yeah, that is really amazing how they've lasted. So the next group of them are Snow White's Scary Adventures, Swiss Family Treehouse, the Grand Prix Raceway, which is now the Tomorrowland Speedway.
Right.
The Train, Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, rest in peace, Tropical Serenade, Enchanted Tiki Room.
Yeah, so it was originally called the Tropical Serenade. Now it's the Enchanted Tiki Room. We had the Skyway, was at the Magic Kingdom opening day. The Keel Boats, Davy Crockett's Explorer Canoes. And then some of the other things I thought were interesting that you kind of had there opening day. So you had the Diamond Horseshoe Review, which was an hour-long show at the Diamond Horseshoe. It was table service. It was kind of like Hoop-Dee-Doo is basically what it was. It was kind of like a precursor for that. And Pecos Bill, which we have a Pecos Bill restaurant, he actually even made an appearance in this show.
Interesting.
So I thought it was interesting that like one of the attractions opening day was,
and he's a folk hero.
Right. It was a sit-down dinner show that they did in there. They also had the Mickey Mouse Review, which I'll put a link to the video of this. Like, go check out the video. It was eventually replaced by Mickey's PhilharMagic, so that's kind of the area it was in. They moved it to Tokyo whenever they replaced it with Mickey's PhilharMagic in 1980, and Tokyo had it for a little bit. But it's like major Chuck E. Cheese vibes. So it was Mickey Mouse animatronic, and it was Mickey and his friends, and they were doing songs. So it was like a musical review, but they were all animatronics.
Nope.
And it is such Chuck E. Cheese vibes.
Nope.
Absolutely insane.
Nope. A pass. They look creepy, and I don't want to see that. It's kind of like if you go back to like the opening day Disneyland Mickey Mouse, and you're just like, ooh,
Yeah,
Mickey. I think you live over in Hollywood. You need a little bit of a facelift.
Yeah. And then these are then kind of getting to the ones that were open. So day 2 was the Liberty Square Riverboat. So I think some people maybe include that as opening day. Yeah. Day 3 was Peter Pan's Flight. And then a couple weeks later on October 14th was 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
One of my questions when I looked at this, because again, I misremembered this, but I feel like whenever I looked up or when we talked about like opening day at Disneyland, there was some issues with like food. There wasn't as much things for people to eat. So I was curious, like what actually existed at Disney World for the people to eat on that opening day. And I was shocked to see it was a lot. Like
Yeah, they had a lot of restaurants there. I was surprised too, looking at the list, seeing how much was actually available on opening day.
right. Like I was blown away. A lot of the places, again, sort of like the rides, are actually, some of them are still there, or there's something else. So I'm gonna kind of
The buildings are still there, basically. Yeah, so I mean, it's most of the restaurants, like a lot of the building structures are there. So to your point, it's maybe not the same name of the restaurant. A lot of
Right.
them are. I mean, a lot of them are the same. But if not, like the structures are still there.
Right. So I'm going to talk about some of these restaurants. So Crystal Palace was actually originally a quick service restaurant, which is interesting. And in 1996, that's when they actually converted it over to the buffet style that it is with the characters.
Oh, with the character meal. Okay.
Yeah. The Adventureland Veranda it was a fast tropical food. And now that's what it, like where the Skipper Canteen is.
Okay.
So I thought that was kind of cool. But then you have the Sunshine Tree Terrace. You have Town Square Cafe, Coca-Cola Refreshment Center. I love the product placement in the name there. You have the Diamond Horseshoe Review, which you mentioned, Pinocchio Village House, Pecos Bill Cafe, Mile Long Bar, which this one was kind of interesting. And also, it brought a lot of questions in my mind because I feel like Walt Disney famously didn't have alcohol.
Well, Disneyland didn't, yeah, for a long time.
Okay, so maybe they did have alcohol here, but it was like they had a strategically placed mirror so that the bar looked really, really long.
Oh, okay. That's pretty
So
cool.
that's why
A cool
it was
effect there.
called
Yeah.
that. The Main Street Confectionery, Liberty Tree Tavern. This one makes me laugh because it sounds more like a Renaissance fair than Disney. And it was King Stephen's Banquet Hall, which is now Cinderella's Royal Table.
So that was the one in the castle, then, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, what my source. So I use Disney Food Blog for this, but
Because I guess if it's now Cinderella's Royal Table, that's the one in the castle.
Yeah, it would make sense.
And then King Stephen's from Sleeping Beauty, which I guess
Doesn't quite
maybe that's the
make
tie-in
sense.
from Disneyland because it's Sleeping Beauty Castle over there. They have Cinderella Castle here, but they wanted a Sleeping Beauty tie-in.
Yeah,
so that's maybe why
maybe.
they named it after King Stephen.
I don't know. I just always think of, like, when I think of this, there's some part of me that is so sad because growing up, after we went to Disney World, my mom brought home this beautiful blue glass, like, goblet. And I remember like looking at it and kind of, I don't want to say coveting it, but I was like, oh, I really love this glass. And several years ago, my mom was kind of going through all of her china and I'm like, I don't want any of this. And then I was like, oh, but the blue glass. And then I remembered it got broken.
Oh,
and
geez.
so today,
that's always what happens.
to today, I'm still like, if I could get my hands on one of those blue glasses, I'm pretty sure like I could kind of clearly picture it. It was like, it had a really dark blue royal, like, color on the top, and then the stem was clear and it was sort of like twisted glass. And I'm like, man, that is the one thing that I wanted out of that dang cabinet.
Yep.
It was the one thing that got
Everything
broken.
you want is always what gets broken.
Yeah.
So, but wrapping up the food options here, you had the Veranda Juice Bar, Main Street Bakery, the Launching Pad, the Plaza Ice Cream Parlor, and the Tomorrowland Terrace Cafe, which is not the Tomorrowland Terrace that you're thinking of, because the current Tomorrowland Terrace was actually a Plaza Pavilion, not on opening day, but that's what it was originally called. This Tomorrowland Terrace Cafe is actually where Cosmic Rays is. Because when I saw this, I was like, wait, the Tomorrowland Terrace Cafe is a different restaurant. I don't think that was their opening day, but that's because they changed that name whenever they had a different one there. So the whole big circle there, but basically where Cosmic Rays was, that used to be called the Tomorrowland Terrace Cafe. Also, interestingly enough, like the Dapper Dans were there opening day. Obviously, you had like your normal parades and everything like that for Disney, but just amazing to think back on that of what it would have been like opening day, the first couple years being at the park. Again, how different everything was, but also how similar everything was. I mean, like we said, the first 10 attractions we listed off are still there today. Now, you don't have some like the Skyway. You don't have 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. So Tomorrowland has definitely grown and expanded. Local Space Mountain, some of that stuff. But yeah, it's a weird mix. Like it's weird to think about of how much and how little things have changed. I feel like that's just like growing up in general. Like it's just everything's the same, but yet it's so different sometimes when you look back on things.
Some things never change. I'm going to say that one again.
But that wraps up the show for this week, taking a look back at opening day of Magic Kingdom. I want to thank everybody again for listening. If you've not done so, please leave us a rating or a review. Subscribe wherever you get your podcast. It really helps, and we really appreciate it.
Thanks for lending us your ears.
Have a great week, everybody. We'll see you here next Monday.
Bye-bye.